Total Drama Island is an animated series from the early 2000s. It's a parody of the hit reality show Survivor, which you've almost definitely heard of, especially if you clicked this video. In Total Drama Island, we will watch 22 contestants compete to try and win the competition and $100,000. But remember, this is not a real reality show. This is a scripted animated show parodying a real reality show. And that's where I come in. On this channel, I try to solve mysteries all the time, whether it's who is A in Pretty Little Liars, who killed Jason Blossom in Riverdale, so on and so forth. But this time, I'm going to be doing something even harder. Can I predict who wins Total Drama Island? This is how it's going to work. I am going to watch Total Drama Island for the very first time. And after each episode, I'm going to jump in here, break down who went home, who won the challenge that they're playing in that episode, and bring up any sort of hints or clues that might lead me to think that a certain individual is going to win the entire season. In every episode, when I jump in here, I have to lock in two different predictions. I'm going to lock in one, who I think is going to win the entire game, the whole season, and two, I'm going to lock in a prediction on who I think is going to go home next. That way, when we get to the end of the season and we find out who wins, we can look back and see exactly how close or far off I was from getting it correct. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump into episode 1.
One island, 22 contestants, and a boatload of cold, hard cash equals infinite drama. Who will win it all?
This is a really fun show so far. I'm a really big Survivor fan, so it's really cool to watch a parody of the show that I'm a big fan of. And if I manage to time this video correctly, this video should be releasing on the premiere week of Survivor Season 49. And I actually have a Survivor podcast called Making the Merge, so if you're interested in Survivor, you know, the link's down below.
Can we just all point out that Andy trying to cut that rope in the challenge was the hardest I've laughed all season? He was going to town, dude.
Because I'm going to be using my knowledge of Survivor, which is the show that this show is parodying, to try to figure out who wins this season of Total Drama Island. I was just going to watch episode 1, but then episodes 1 and 2 are like a 2-part premiere. So I actually watched episodes 1 and 2 so far. And basically in episode 1, we meet all of the contestants. And they are split up into 2 different teams, the Screaming Gophers and the Killer Bass. Now, what's interesting is when they introduce all of the different contestants, they do it one at a time. So I was kind of curious, like, oh, well, maybe the characters that they introduce to us first are more important than the ones that we meet towards the end. But by the time that we got all of the contestants introduced, it just seemed like it didn't really matter. Like, it didn't seem to be in any significant order. So let's meet our 2 teams. The Screaming Gophers consist of Gwen, Trent, Heather, Cody, Lindsay, Beth, Katie, Owen, Lashana, Justin, and Noah. The Killer Bass, they consist of Jeff, Bridget, DJ, Tyler, Sadie, Izzy, Courtney, Ezekiel, Duncan, Eva, and Harold. However, and it's important to note, I guess, that we do get a team switch. Sadie and Katie are like inseparable best friends, and they're not on the same team. So the host, Chris McLean, who, do you guys like my Chris McLean costume? I've even got like you like it? Chris McLean allows Katie to switch with Izzy. So they are now on opposite teams. Izzy is on the Screaming Gophers and Katie is on the Killer Bass. But you know what? This brings us to our first challenge of the season. For this challenge, there is a 1,000-foot high cliff, and everyone is going to have to jump off of this cliff into the lake below. And the lake is filled with man-eating sharks. That's what our contestants are aiming for. Not the man-eating sharks, but the water, and then To be more specific, there's a little area, it's like a little target. They're aiming for that because supposedly that's, a shark-free area, I guess. For each team member that jumps off the cliff into the water below, the team will receive 1 crate of supplies to build a hot tub, which is the second part of the challenge. They will have to build a hot tub. The team with the best hot tub wins reward, which the reward is a killer hot tub party for one of the 2 teams. The losing team will be going to the bonfire ceremony, where they will be voting one of their own teammates out of the game. To use a survivor term, they will be voted off the island. The killer bass goes first. Everyone on their team jumps into the water except for DJ and Courtney. And since those 2 didn't jump, they have to wear chicken hats on their heads because they're chickens. So the killer bass have 9 jumpers and 2 chickens. So if the screaming gophers can beat 9 jumpers, they will get an advantage in the challenge, which is like wheelbarrows to help move the crates of hot tub parts back to camp. The screaming gophers managed to get 10 of their players to jump off the cliff, and only 1 chicken, which means that they get the advantage in the challenge. Then, because they had the wheelbarrows, they pretty much dominate against the other team. They make a perfect hot tub and they win the whole challenge. The killer bass make a terrible hot tub, and their whole team dynamic is just falling apart. Courtney got a huge bug bite on her eye, so it swells up. Katie and Sadie had to pee, but in the bushes that they were peeing was poison ivy. So it's a whole mess. And since the killer bass lost the challenge, they are going to the bonfire ceremony where they will be voting someone out. And they honestly struggle to figure out who they're going to vote out, who goes home first. And then Ezekiel makes a lot of sexist comments. And so everybody's like, well, let's just send him home then. So, sorry, buddy. I feel like I wasted ink. But Ezekiel is the first one out of the game. So now we have 2 things that we need to lock in. We need to lock in a prediction for who we think is going to be eliminated next. And then we need to lock in a prediction of who we think is going to win the entire season. Now, if this was real Survivor, my best bet for figuring out who gets eliminated next is by picking someone from the tribe that lost this episode. Because typically in real life, when you're watching Survivor, when a tribe loses a challenge, especially the first challenge, morale is low, they don't have the momentum, and they proceed to lose the next few challenges as well. However, this is a scripted show, which means that, human psychology isn't really going to work. It's all about writing structure and storytelling devices. So maybe the writers of the show will want someone on the other team to go home next episode, so that way our tribes stay consistent for the foreseeable future. So since the killer bass lost a player this episode, maybe the screaming gophers will lose someone next episode. So who on the screaming gophers do I think could be going home first? Some of the players we see a lot more than others. For instance, we see a whole lot from Heather. They're almost setting her up to be like the big villain of the season. We also see a lot of Owen, Lashana, and Lindsay. Trent, Gwen, and Izzy. Those are also seen a good bit. Like, these feel like we see them more than some of the other characters. Like Justin and Cody. Oh, and Noah. Those 3 we don't see as much as the others. Honestly, if I'm thinking about it, Justin's only gimmick is that he's super hot. And so maybe that's going to be like a running joke throughout the season. And it's kind of like a, this is a show that's satirizing Survivor. And there's always like the hot person who manages to go really far just because they're attractive. So does that mean that Justin's going to go pretty far into the season? So if we take him away, we have Cody and Noah. And honestly, it's kind of a toss-up between those 2. Like, we don't see either of these characters a whole bunch. And if I'm being completely honest, Cody has a very similar character to Harold, who's on the other team. So then I'm asking the question, does this show need 2 characters that are very similar? You know what I mean? Like, what are they doing for the show that the other one can't? which makes me think that maybe Cody is the one who goes home next episode. So I'm going to lock in Cody for who I think is going home next. To help us keep track, I put a little, the next Olympics. But yeah, so this is who I'm locking in, Cody, for who I think is going home next. Now I need to figure out who I want to lock in for who I think can win the entire show. I'm going to go based on the characters that we saw the most of in the first 2 episodes, because I mean, you know, you want your winner to be involved in the show heavily from the beginning, right? We see a ton from Courtney and Heather. We see a lot of Owen, Lashana, and Duncan. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just remembering him more than others because he looks different than a lot of the guys. I mean, they're definitely setting up Heather to be like the mean girl trope, the villain trope in Survivor. So that leads me to think that like she's going to go really far in the game. Courtney is also being set up as someone who's playing the game really hard. Even though she was on the losing team this episode, it's still setting her up as like a master strategist. I also think Lashana could be a potential winner. She's like majorly involved in the show thus far. She's a great player and she was on the winning team this week. And a major reason that her team won the challenge is because she forced Heather to jump off the cliff. She also seems to be Heather's foil character so far. Like if Heather's the bad guy, Heather's the villain, then the good guy or her rival is Lashana, or at least that's the way that it felt in this episode or these 2 episodes. Plus, Lashana is very likable, almost like a hero character in Survivor. And, you know, Survivor's whole thing is there's heroes and there's villains. And then sometimes there's a season called Heroes versus Villains. So when did this show come out? This show came out in the early 2000s, like 2006 or whatever. So that's like Survivor's prime. And so if I'm making a parody of that show, then I want to have a bad guy and I want to have a good guy, and those 2 would go head to head. So I'm thinking I'm either going to lock in Lashana or Heather for who I think is going to win the whole season. Yeah, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to lock in Lashana. I think Lashana is going to win the whole season. It occurs to me right now, maybe I should have done the winner pick on the green and the next elimination on the red. But yeah, okay. We still have like 20 something episodes to go. I'm not going to get caught up in the weeds of the first 2 episodes. Let's just go watch the next one.
New episode tomorrow. Total Drama Island. The challenge this time is to see who can stay awake the longest.
Stay awake for 12 hours? I can do that in my sleep.
Episode 3. First things first, let's look at who I locked in last time for who I thought was going to go home in this episode, which was Cody. I locked him in. I thought he was going home. I did not get that right. Cody does not go home in this episode. But what's interesting is that I should have trusted my instincts, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's talk about this episode's challenge. The challenge is the Awake-a-thon. All of the contestants had to run like 20 kilometers. I think the show's Canadian. I don't know how much a kilometer is. Then they ate a giant buffet. And then it's time for the real challenge, which is whoever stays up the longest wins. If you fall asleep, you're out. The last person standing wins the challenge for their team. The challenge goes for over 80 hours until finally Gwen wins the challenge for the Screaming Gophers, which means that the Screaming Gophers have won 2 challenges in a row. They have yet to send someone home. This is what I meant when I said I should have trusted my instincts. If you remember in the last part, I talked about how if this was real Survivor, then the winning team would probably win again this week. And that's exactly what happened. But I backtracked because this isn't a real reality show. This is an animated scripted show. But I'm going to start trusting my gut from now on. We learned 2 big things in this episode that I think is going to help us going forward with making our predictions. We see that Heather is a master strategist. She does this move where she steals Eva's MP3 player, which she is obsessed with. And when Eva isn't able to find it, she thinks that the people on her tribe stole it. And so she goes absolutely crazy, destroys everything. And she's like threatening her teammates. And then Heather walks up and she's like, "Hey, Eva, I found this by the fire pit. You must have dropped it by accident." And Eva's like, "Oops, maybe I got a little carried away, guys. Sorry." But that was enough for the killer bass to vote out Eva. So Heather single-handedly got Eva to scream and yell at her own tribe to the point where they voted her out in this episode. This tells me that Heather is going to be going very far into the game. They are setting her up to be the master strategist, the evil villain of the season, and I'm not sure if they would let the big villain of the season win the whole game, but I think she is definitely going very, very far. The second big thing that we learn is that we watch a lot of Gwen and Trent in this episode. Looks like they're going to be a showmance. So because these two seem to have this like will they won't they relationship, I imagine that the two of them are going to be in the game for a while. And there's one other little showmance that seems to be brewing, and that is between Tyler and Lindsay. So it's safe to say that we will be seeing both of them for the foreseeable future until that relationship gets resolved in some way. That storyline comes to a conclusion. So that brings us to our predictions. Who do I think is going to go home next episode? Well, since the Screaming Gophers have won 2 challenges in a row, and at the end of this episode, we get this big moment with the Killer Bass team where they're like, we are not losing again. We can do this. I think we're going to see a pretty basic Survivor plotline with these tribes. The underdog tribe who keeps losing is going to, fight against the giants and manage to win a challenge after being repeatedly stomped on. So are we going to see the underdog team beat the odds next episode, or is it going to be a couple more episodes before they finally get their first win? Well, let's just say the Killer Bass lose again. Who do I think from that tribe would go home? Maybe Katie or Sadie? They're fun characters, but they really don't have much going on other than they are best friends. But the only question I have with that is like, if one of them goes home, the way the dynamic works, I feel like the other one will like go home too. They're like, I can't be without her. I'm also going to be leaving. So I don't know if they're going to do that now or if they're going to wait a little bit to have that kind of big moment where they both leave at the same time. Or maybe they break up and they're no longer friends and they go their separate ways or something. I don't know. There's a lot that can be done with these characters, even though there's not much happening right this second. We haven't seen a lot of Harold or DJ, or even Jeff. So I guess those 3 are also possibilities. But let's say the Killer Bass manages to win next episode. Who from the Screaming Gophers do I think would go home? I mean, honestly, I have lots of ideas for who could go home from that tribe. Justin, Noah, Cody, Beth, maybe even Lindsay. But you know what? She does have that showmance going on, so maybe not Lindsay. Oh, Izzy? Where's Izzy? Maybe Izzy? We've barely seen any of those characters that I just named. And when we do get a moment with one of those characters, it's usually for like a very small joke, just to kind of be like, hey, they're still here. Okay, let's go ahead and say that next week the Killer Bass manage to defeat the odds. I'm going to pick someone from the Screaming Gophers. Oh man, my thoughts are it's going to be like Cody or Noah or Beth. And I locked in Cody last time and we got that wrong. But we still have barely seen anything from him. So I think he's definitely going home soon. I think I'm just going to keep him locked in for who I think is going home next. Now, who do I think is going to win the whole season? Last episode, I locked in Lashana as my winner pick. I still think that's a great pick. However, we do get a whole lot of Gwen and Trent, where they almost seem to be pushed to the forefront, like they're the main characters of the show. Maybe they do a thing where Gwen and Trent are in the final 3 or 4 together, and one of them has to betray the other after this whole season of being in this showmance, And we also know that Heather is playing the game very, very well. But I do think that I'm going to keep my locked-in pick with Lashana. I think she's a fan favorite. She's one of the most fun characters to see in the show so far. She's a good foil for the villain, Heather. So I'm locking in Lashana. It's pretty crazy that I'm keeping both of my locked-in picks from last episode, but, as we watch more episodes and we learn more information, I'll probably pick up some better information. I don't know. I'm going with the vibes, dude. I do feel good about these picks. let's go watch the next episode.
New episode Thursday. Total Drama Island. For the Bats to win at Dodgeball, they'll need Duncan to stay alert and aggressive.
Episode 4. This was kind of a major episode because we got to see a lot of the characters that we haven't gotten to know yet. Like Harold. Harold is like the main hero, the main character of this episode. So that takes him out of my most likely to go home next list, and it puts him on the potential winners list. So who does go home then, Chase? Well, the challenge this week is Dodgeball. Both of the teams playing each other in Dodgeball, best of 5 games wins. And right off the bat, the Gophers start dominating. They win game 1 thanks to Cody, the person that I thought was going to be going home next. Which, you know, when that happened, I was like, uh-oh, I don't think he's going home. Then they win game 2 thanks to Owen, Owen's really good at Dodgeball. And that is when the tides change. The ultimate underdogs of the season, the Killer Bass. They win games 3 and 4. And that's because Duncan takes control of the team. And he's like, I'm going to show you how to do this prison style. Because his whole thing is that he's in juvie when he's not on the island. Now it's down to the final tiebreaker game. This game decides the winning team. Who's going to be sending someone home tonight? Who's going to be celebrating and treating themselves like champions? Harold ends up saving the day, defeating Owen, and winning the game. They get their first win of the season. Now, what this meant for the Screaming Gophers is that they would be voting their first player off of their team. And so they decide to vote out the person who refused to participate in the challenge, which was Noah. Which, I mean, to be completely honest, I was really close to picking, it was either him or Cody for who goes home next. Turns out to be him. I mean, guys, we're only a few episodes into the season, and the conspiracy board, it's opening up quick. But then the question is, who do I think is going to be going home next episode? We see a whole lot of both Cody and Harold in this episode. And while they were at the bottom of my list last episode, I don't think that they're likely to go home next. And then as for the other players that are like really involved in this episode, you have Duncan, Owen, Courtney, and of course, Heather. Lindsay and Tyler are kind of a major part of this episode as well. We also get some information. Lindsay and Heather are a part of an alliance, and Beth is now a part of that alliance, which makes me think that those 3 are going to be going quite a ways together. We have not seen a lot from Bridget, Jeff, DJ, and Izzy, or Justin. And now that the Killer Bass have won a challenge, it's kind of a toss-up of who's going to win next week. So really anyone could go home. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I think maybe Justin is the next one to go. The joke of like, oh, he's so hot, it's pretty much run its course at this point. And there's no other sort of storyline or interesting thing about him. So yeah, I'm just going to say he's probably likely to go home. There's not much science that can really go into this part of the game, which is like me trying to figure out who goes home each week. I'll be surprised if I get more than 1 or 2, but I do feel like, you know, this is a good pick for who should go home next. Now, let's talk about what really matters, which is who do I think is going to win the entire season? So far, I have locked in Lashana as who I think is going to win. And I kind of want to stick with my guns here. Like, I don't want to just be like changing my winner pick every single episode, because that would kind of feel like cheating, right? Like if I've locked in every character at some point, when we get to the end and we find out who wins the season, I can be like, oh, I knew it was them back in episode 4. So I'm going to stick with my guns. I have no reason to believe that Lashana will be going home anytime soon. So that still makes her a great qualifier for the winner pick. I'm going to be locking in Lashana, and I'm locking in Justin for who I think is going home next. All right, let's go watch the next episode and find out if I'm right.
Total Drama Island.
I got one right, dude. I can't believe it. I just watched episode 5, and Justin goes home. I mean, I honestly figured it would not be long before he left because, you know, his whole thing is just, he has one joke, which is he's so hot. That's kind of like the only thing about his character. And so I was like, I mean, they can't do this all season long. Eventually, he's going to have to either evolve or get out of there. I can't believe it. I actually can't believe I got one of these right. The challenge for this episode was a talent show. So each team would select a few players on their team to perform in the talent show, which would be judged by Chef. He's the chef at the camp, and he's also kind of like the sidekick to the host, Chris McLean. Whichever team he deems the most talented will win the challenge, and the losing team will vote someone out. Justin was actually the first one up in the talent show, and his talent was that he's hot. See what I mean about like the joke running its course? It comes up at least once an episode, and you only have so much runway with that. DJ did a ballet routine. Trent sings and plays the guitar. Bridget says that she can stand on her hands for 20 minutes, but she ends up puking. Heather steals Gwen's diary and reads it on stage for her talent. And then Jeff was supposed to like ride his skateboard and do some tricks, broke his skateboard. Who saves the day? Harold. Once again, 2 episodes in a row, Harold saves the day with his epic beatboxing. So the Killer Bass wins the challenge. The Screaming Gophers are sending someone home. And, they voted off Justin. Big win for me. I was ecstatic. I think what's very interesting is most of the tribe actually wanted to vote off Heather because she read Gwen's diary on live TV. But Heather is in full control of the tribe because she has an alliance with Beth and Lindsay. They're the only ones that have an alliance. So they have the numbers in their tribe to send Justin home. This episode fully pits Heather versus Gwen against each other going forward, right? Because Heather makes the shot where she reads Gwen's diary on live TV, embarrassing her. Gwen retaliates by putting red ants in Heather's bed. So I'm assuming both of them are going to be sticking around for a while because they're going to be going back and forth at each other. Which brings me to my next point, which is Harold. We have watched him be the hero of his team 2 episodes in a row. Could this be our winner? The ultimate underdog. His whole character is he's essentially a Napoleon Dynamite ripoff. But he's proven to be a really big help to his tribe, and he's getting more and more screen time in the episodes. I think that he could actually stick around and win this thing, dude. And I think I'm going to be formally changing my winner pick, my locked in pick, to Harold. I'm riding high on Harold, baby. I'm doing this not only because I feel like, he's the ultimate underdog and he's become a hero, but also Lashana's character has really fallen into the background. One of the main reasons I was locking her in as my winner pick is I thought she was going to be Heather's foil for her being the villain. But it seems very clear to me now that Heather and Gwen are going to be the rivals going up against each other. So now let's lock in who we think is going home next episode. There's really no way of me figuring out which team is going to win. They've both won twice at this point. So there's no telling who's going to win next week. So I'm just going to kind of go off of the vibes of who we don't see a whole lot of, which would be DJ, Jeff, and Izzy. We've barely seen any of them. Everyone else on the show, all the other players, all the other contestants, they've kind of found a place in the story. Even someone like Cody, who I was so sure was going to be going home soon, he is in love with Gwen, and it's obviously not a shared feeling, but that's still like a character trait. That's still like a story. Will Cody manage to win a challenge and save Gwen and win her heart at some point? There's something for him as a character to do going forward. And then there's Izzy, who, we see almost nothing from Izzy in these episodes. Even Jeff, who we've barely seen anything of, even he was supposed to ride his skateboard in the talent show before he broke his skateboard. So I think Izzy is for sure my pick for who's going home next. All right, this has been a blast. I'm loving this. Let's go watch the next episode.
Total Drama Island.
Well, guys, I thought that I got 2 right in a row, and I was about to lose my mind. But Izzy did not go home in episode 6. The challenge for this episode was spending the night in the woods. And they had to like use a map to find their campsite. You know, they had to find their own food. And then the first ones to make it back to camp the next morning, they win the challenge. And we get a few important moments in this episode, in particular between Duncan and Courtney. They kind of have a little showmance brewing, you know, like a will they, won't they type thing, which we've seen already in this show. And what that tells me is that neither of these two are going home until that storyline gets resolved. We do manage to see more of Izzy and Bridget in this episode. Bridget accidentally burns down the killer bass's tent, and Izzy dresses up as a bear and scares everyone on her tribe. And when she did that, I was like, dude, they are for sure sending Izzy home for dressing up like a bear and scaring them all to death. I am a genius. I got 2 right in a row. Maybe I'm going to manage to get 10 predictions right throughout this show. I'm awesome. I was not right. I am not awesome. The Gophers actually win the challenge. And that's because Katie and Sadie got lost. And so they didn't show back up with the rest of their tribe in the morning. So because of that, Killer Bass has to go to the ceremony, the bonfire ceremony, where they will be sending someone home. And they vote out Katie. Now, we talked about this because these two are so close. They're such great best friends. I was under the impression that maybe they would both go home at the same time. That is not what happens. Sadie is still in the game for now. I honestly would not be surprised if she goes home next. Her whole storyline was tied together with her friend. I don't know what she's going to be doing without her friend, so I actually think that I'm going to make my next elimination pick. I think she's going home next episode. And then for my winner pick, I locked in Harold last episode for who I thought was going to win the whole season. We don't see anything from him at all this episode, but that's okay. We still have a long season ahead of us. We're not going to be seeing all of the characters all of the time. I still feel good about him being this underdog who manages to win the whole game. So I'm going to keep that locked in, and let's go watch the next episode.
Total Drama Island.
Episode 7. This episode is like Fear Factor. All of the contestants have to face their biggest fears. Like Heather has to go up against a sumo wrestler. Gwen is buried alive. Tyler has to deal with a chicken. Beth has to be covered by bugs. Sadie and Lindsay have to get bad haircuts. Owen and Izzy have to go up on a plane. Harold, my boy, gets attacked by ninjas. Lashana gets chased by a giant spider costume. Bridget gets left alone in the woods. DJ has to touch a snake. Trent deals with a mime. Cody has to defuse a ticking time bomb. And then Duncan has to hug a Celine Dion stand-up sign, like a music store standee, like her made out of cardboard. Jeff is hailed on, like the weather anomaly, hail. And then Courtney has to jump into green jelly. If you're able to confront your fear, you get a point for your team. If you can't, you don't get a point. The Killer Bass end up losing once again, and I thought I was going to get lucky and Sadie was going to get sent home. But Sadie actually completed her fear. So Tyler, who did not confront his fear, gets sent home. Now, I thought that he was going to be around for a while because of his potential showmance that he was having with Lindsay. But we actually hadn't seen a lot from that showmance in an episode or two, so maybe I should have seen that coming. We're losing players left and right, guys. I mean, this thing was full when we started. We only get a quick moment of Harold in this episode. It's when he's, fighting the ninjas. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm getting a little bit worried that he might not actually be the winner of the season. There are a handful of characters that have quickly kind of established themselves as the main characters of the show. And that is like Duncan and Courtney, Heather, of course, Gwen, Trent, and even Owen. These characters get way more screen time compared to the others. And that makes me think maybe the winner is actually one of them. And honestly, who is the one person that we see the most of every single episode since episode 1? Heather. I've said it a million times already in this video. She's being set up as the big villain of the season. She's like a master strategist. I'm officially going to be changing my locked-in pick from Harold to Heather. As for who I think is going home in the next episode, the Killer Bass have lost the previous 2 episodes, and they've lost a total of 4 people. The Screaming Gophers have only lost 2 people. So I think it's very likely that the Screaming Gophers are going to lose someone in the next episode. And if I had to guess, it's probably someone we have not seen a whole lot of in the episodes. I think that it could be time for either Cody or Izzy to get sent home packing. Now, I would say Beth too, because we barely see her, but she is a part of Heather's alliance, and I can see her going really far with the help of Heather. So I think I'm actually going to change my locked-in pick from Sadie, and I am going to lock in Cody. I'm surprised he's lasted this long, to be completely honest. If you remember, I locked him in a bunch of episodes ago. I think he might have even been the first person I locked into who should go home. All right, see you next episode to see if I'm right, and Cody goes home.
Total Drama Island.
The challenge for episode 8 is a big one. They have to ride canoes across the lake to Boney Island. They then have to hike all the way across the island while carrying their canoes over their heads. They have to build a giant rescue fire and then paddle all the way back home. The first one to paddle back is the winner. There's also a major plot point that this island is cursed, and if you take anything from Boney Island, you will be cursed. And Beth takes something from Boney Island, so seems like she's maybe going to be cursed. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and lock her in for who I think is going to go home next episode, because when there's a curse from Boney Island, I feel like you're going to be cursed, you know? Speaking of who went home, the Screaming Gophers were set to win the challenge, but then Izzy gave the Killer Bass some advice, and that helped them end up winning the challenge. So she cost her own team the win. They were going to vote Izzy out at the bonfire ceremony, but before they could, the military police showed up to arrest her. So she just ran away. So she's been eliminated and maybe arrested. We do get a few other plot points in this episode. For example, it looks like Jeff and Bridget might have a little showmance brewing. So that's pretty interesting. Cody is in this episode a lot, which is funny because I locked him in as who I thought was going home this episode. But nope, he's still here. He's still around, and he actually won a bet that he had with Owen. His bet was if he could get Gwen's bra or not. And after Cody in this episode helps Gwen and Trent kind of rekindle their showmance, as a favor, as a thank you to Cody, Gwen does give him the bra. Now, who do I think is going to win the season? Last time I changed my pick from Harold to Heather, and I think that was a good move because in this episode we barely saw Harold, and when we did, it was because he almost cost his team the challenge because he used the oars for the canoe as firewood. So safe to say, because we've barely been seeing anything from him, I think he's going to be going home soon. Heather is also not in this episode a ton, but she's still very much a main character. I really do think that Heather is a great pick to win the season. And I mean, let's just look at the numbers. Now that Izzy is gone, Heather's team, the Screaming Gophers, have 8 players left. The other team, the Killer Bass, have 7. Now, I am curious when these teams are going to merge. In the show Survivor, that this is a parody of, Survivor, they have teams for a few weeks, and then these teams merge, and then it's every man for himself. And so I'm curious if Total Drama Island follows that format. I imagine they would have to, because at some point, these teams are going to dwindle down to the point where they don't make sense as teams anymore. So I'm hoping that happens soon. But as for right now, I'm definitely sticking with Heather for my winner pick. She's got the control of her team because she has an alliance with Lindsay and Beth. And even though Beth is cursed, and I think she could be going home soon, they're still on top. All right, to episode 9, we go.
Total Drama Island.
The challenge for episode 9 is paintball hunting. It's like Goodwill hunting, but with paintballs. Some people are hunters, and some are dressed up as deer. And to be completely honest, by the end of the challenge, the Screaming Gophers have fallen into chaos, and they're like shooting their own teammates a lot. And it's all because everybody hates Heather, including Beth, who was a part of Heather's alliance. But she was being way too bossy to her alliance members, Lindsay and Beth, essentially using them as personal assistants to do all of her chores and all of her things for her. And a thing to remember about Beth is that she has a cursed idol from Boney Island. So I think that's definitely going to come up at some point. And I mean, I was pretty sure since their team lost that she was going to be getting sent home for sure. But actually, Cody is the one who gets sent home. And it's because he is severely injured by a bear. And what's very interesting is even though he was pretty much just like incapacitated because he was mauled by a bear, it still came down to him and Heather in the final 2 seats at the ceremony on who was going to get sent home. It seems like we're getting the storyline that she is public enemy number 1. And it's the kind of thing where like, oh, well, she's going to be going home any day now. But I actually think that what they're going to do, just like how they did in this episode, is every time it looks like Heather's going to be gone, she manages to find her way out of it. And I do truly think that she's still a great winner pick. I think that we're going to watch her continue to strategize and manage to worm her way out of bad situations to the point where she makes it all the way to the finale. So I am keeping Heather locked in as my winner pick. As for who I think is going to be going home next week, or I say next week, next episode, I'm so used to Survivor. I have the Survivor podcast, which I've talked about, Making the Merge, and where I essentially do this same thing. Me and my buddies, we all have like a draft. We draft players, and then every week it's essentially like who has the winner on their drafted team. And so I'm so used to saying this week because we do it as Survivor is airing. I'm not waiting a week to watch these episodes, dude. That would take forever. There's so many episodes. I'm watching these a lot. Anyway. Beth still has the cursed idol, so I think it's likely that she could be going home next episode. And I'm also a little bit annoyed that the one time that I didn't lock in Cody, who I've locked in a lot to go home, the one time I didn't lock him in, he actually got eliminated. But yeah, it should be getting easier to predict who goes home next. Because, I mean, we're losing players at such a rapid rate. And we have a pretty firm grasp on the players who are the main characters of the show. Like Owen and Heather. We see them every single episode, no matter what. And then there's players that we do not see barely any of a lot, which is like Beth or Sadie or Harold at this point. Even though she has the cursed idol, I do think she is a more important part of the show for the foreseeable future than Harold. So I'm going to be locking in Harold for who I think is going home. All right, let's go watch that episode and find out if I'm right.
Total Drama Island.
Episode 10, we get the payoff, finally, to Beth having the cursed idol from Boney Island, which of course it would happen right after I switched my pick from her to Harold for who I thought was going home next. So yeah, Beth gets sent home. It's because everyone noticed like the cursed idol that she had, and they blamed her for the reason that they keep losing challenges. Because at this point they had lost 3 challenges in a row, and they were like, well, it's obviously because she has a cursed idol, and not because of any lack of ability on our parts. Another very interesting thing about this episode is that Heather was in the bottom too. She almost went home. It was between her and Beth. And it's because everyone hates Heather. And I'm very hopeful that this is just going to keep happening all season. She seems like she's going home. She manages to get out of it all the way to the end. I'm going to keep her as my winner pick, dude. As for who I'm going to lock in who I think is going home next week, I feel like a little bit of insight, because now that the Screaming Gophers are no longer cursed by the Boney Island cursed idol, I'm assuming that the Killer Bass will be losing the challenge in the next episode. And if the Killer Bass lose, then I'm very certain that it's either going to be Sadie or Harold who goes home next. And just to kind of switch it up, because I locked in Harold last time, I am going to lock in Sadie. This episode's challenge, it was a cooking challenge, and we didn't really get that much information that helps us going forward. Like, we still get little bits of Jeff and Bridget's showmance and Duncan and Courtney's showmance. So I feel like those four are safe for the foreseeable future. And then Heather still has Lindsay as a part of her alliance, and she's constantly bossing her around. Trent and Gwen, they still kind of have their showmance happening, but those two were like barely in this episode. I'm sure that we'll get some sort of big moment between them soon, but we'll see. What's interesting is after Harold and Sadie are gone, we're left with just players that we see a lot of. We're left with kind of the main characters. So I'm going to be continuing to lock in these two until they go home, because I think that they're very obviously the last two background characters. We see them sometimes, but they're not a core main cast member, the way that Courtney and Owen and Lashana and Duncan and DJ and Gwen and Jeff and Lindsay and Heather and Bridget and Trent are. So after these two go home, it's going to be really difficult to predict who goes home next. So yeah, things are going to get intense. I will be flabbergasted if one of these two are not the ones that goes home next episode. So yeah, but hey, anything can happen on Total Drama Island.
Total Drama Island.
In episode 11, we get a bunch of challenges that are all based on trust. You got rock climbing, poison blowfish cooking, blind William Tell, a blind trapeze, and of course, the blind toboggan race. Now, Killer Bass ends up losing most of the challenges, and they are sending someone home. Last episode, I said that I would be shocked if anyone other than Sadie or Harold went home. And I locked in Sadie. Sure enough, boys, we were right. Let's get some dubs in the chat. Everybody comment. Everybody just drop dubs, bro. WWW. Dude, that means that out of 11 episodes so far, we have predicted 2 of the eliminations. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting at least 3, because, Harold's definitely the person that's going home next episode. I'll just go ahead and lock him in now. Harold's the only one left that I would not consider a main character. So yeah, locking him in. Now, for who I think is going to win the whole season, I've been locking in Heather pretty consistently. And I still think she's a great pick. I'm probably going to keep her as my winner pick. In this episode, she gets revenge on Gwen because Gwen locked her into a freezer last episode. And so she gets revenge by pantsing her during the rock climbing challenge. I think that we're going to be seeing this back and forth between Heather and Gwen for a really long time. And I'm actually thinking it's going to be a Heather-Gwen final 2 in the finale. So I'm definitely keeping Heather as my winner pick. I think Harold's obviously going home next episode. That's really all I have to say about this episode. So let's go watch the next one and find out if I'm right.
Total Drama Island.
Oh, man. Episode 12 shocked me, to say the least. And I'm being completely honest, after what happens in this episode, it's going to be damn near impossible to predict who goes home each episode. So the challenge for this episode is that Chef is running the camp like a boot camp. And if you can't handle it, you can drop out. Last person standing is the winner. The Gophers win thanks to Gwen, which means that the Killer Bass are sending someone home. Now, the only people that are left on Killer Bass at this point are Duncan, DJ, Courtney, Jeff, Bridget, and Harold. And this episode was really focused on the showmance that has been happening between Duncan and Courtney. Like, Courtney kisses Duncan and everything. And because I've been saying it for episodes and episodes now, I was so certain that Harold was the one going home next. And I mean, even in the show, like in this episode, all the guys that are left, they're bullying Harold. He doesn't really have any friends, you know, no alliances. So imagine my shock when Harold is not the one eliminated. Courtney gets voted out of the game, dude. Now, it turns out that Harold actually broke into the voting box and changed the votes to send Courtney home. He was the one going home next, but he cheated and now Courtney's gone. So that's insane. Harold is still in the game. But now let's talk numbers. The Killer Bass are down to 5 players, now that Courtney is gone. And the Gophers have 6 players. Gwen, Heather, LaShawna, Lindsay, Owen, Trent. So in order for me to predict who goes home next episode, I have to figure out if the writers of the show are wanting the teams to be an even 5-5, or do they want the Killer Bass to lose for the 3rd time in the row and then have them be down 6-4? Because if the Killer Bass loses again, I think it's a no-brainer that Harold goes home. But I almost wonder at this point, is he just going to manage to keep surviving until the end? Like, should I have kept him as my winner pick when I had him all the way back towards the beginning of this season? But let's say that the Gophers lose next episode. Who from that team goes home? It's becoming more and more difficult to pick because everyone left is a main character. There's no more background characters that only get like 5 seconds of screen time every episode. I will say that we haven't seen really anything about Gwen and Trent's showmance lately. Maybe that means it's time for Trent to go home, because Gwen still has a reason to be in the game story-wise, right? She has her feud with Heather, but Trent doesn't really have that. Or maybe we'll get some sort of storyline between Heather and her right-hand woman, Lindsay. You know, they're always beefing because she bosses Lindsay around so much. Maybe that's about to come to a head. Or maybe we'll lose someone that I do not see coming, like what happened this episode when Courtney went home. Because like she was a character that we see so much in the episodes. But I mean, now that her storyline with Duncan is over and that showmance is gone, maybe that means Duncan's time is going to be soon for him to leave. Oh man, I think I'm going to change my prediction for who goes home next from Harold to Trent. I thought that it was going to be easier to predict who goes home next as the numbers got smaller, because it's like, you know, when there's 5 people left, I'll have a 1 in 5 shot of figuring out who goes home next week. But it's actually getting more difficult. Oh man. But who am I going to lock in for who I think is the winner of the season? I feel really good about Heather still, but this is what I'm going to say. If Harold manages to survive another episode, then I think I'm going to actually change my locked in pick from Heather back to Harold if he manages to survive next episode. Because at that point, it's like maybe he is the ultimate underdog who's going to win the whole season. And I was locked in on that. I was right about that. But I got worried because I thought he was going to go home. But no, I'm going to keep Heather locked in. But I might change it next episode if Harold's still here. All right, let's go watch the next episode and find out.
Total Drama Island.
Episode 13. Harold goes home. You almost had me, Harold. I almost bought 50,000 shares of Harold stock. Imagine how embarrassing it would have been if I changed my winner pick from Heather to Harold last episode and then Harold went home. Do you know how embarrassing it would have been if my winner pick went home? It almost feels like that should be like a part of the challenge. Maybe I'll make that a part of the challenge. If the person that I have locked in as my winner pick gets eliminated, I just automatically lose. Challenge over, game over. I do think it's ironic though that the one time that I didn't lock in Harold, because I was so suspicious of Harold, I didn't lock him in as being the one that goes home. he goes home. I honestly thought that I was going to be right about Trent because I thought Trent was going to go home this episode. And in this episode, he has to go to the hospital because of a skydiving incident. And he like breaks his whole body. The challenge for this episode was extreme sports. So there was like sofa bed skydiving, rodeo moose riding, sea-doo water skiing. And the Gophers end up winning and Harold gets sent home. But I will say that a big thing that happens in this episode is that Gwen and Bridget are trying to figure out which guy wrote them a poem and like which girl the poem was for. So they're arguing, they're kind of competing. Gwen thinks that Trent wrote her the poem that they found, and Bridget thinks that Jeff wrote her the poem that they found. Turns out Harold is the one that wrote the love poem, and he wrote it for Lashana. So Lashana and Harold kiss and have this big showman's moment as Harold's being dragged away after being eliminated. Another really funny thing I noticed about this episode, and I hadn't noticed it yet, I have the captions on, and the subtitles are different from the dialogue that's being spoken sometimes. And you can tell from the lips that they've redubbed some lines. What the captions are saying is what it used to say. And then they've redubbed stuff because like the word boobies is said a lot in this episode and it keeps getting changed to booyah and chest and stuff like that. And I think it's very interesting because it's like in chest and stuff like that. And I think that's very interesting because it's like Netflix obviously had the old version at some point because the subtitles still reflect the old dialogue. So at what point were they like, we need to change some of this? Because the show originally aired in like 2006 or 2007. So what happened recently that we're like, we need to change some of these words to make them more appropriate, I guess? And then it's like, how do you even know like the original voice actors are available? I can't really look any of this up because I can't risk seeing spoilers for who wins the season. But if you want to take the time to look this up and you know, let me know down in the comments why they redubbed a bunch of stuff. Anyway, now that Harold is gone, who is going to go home next? I still think Trent is probably up for elimination. Cut that. And the Killer Bass are actually down to 4 players, which is pretty insane because the Gophers have 6. So it's a safe bet that the Gophers are going to be who's losing someone next week, or maybe we'll get the merge and all of the, you know, the tribes will merge and it's every person for themselves. I mean, guys, look at this. We've lost so many players. It feels like it was just yesterday that we watched Ezekiel say a lot of terrible things about women and then get sent home packing. I'm honestly shocked Harold made it this far into the game. But who do I think is going home next? That is the question. If the Gophers are going to lose someone, I think it's going to be either Trent or Lindsay. Or something crazy could happen. And just like how Courtney went home way before I thought she would, maybe we'll lose one of these main characters. I'm going to keep Trent locked in for who I think is going home next. And I'm definitely keeping Heather for who I think is going to win the entire game. All right, let's go watch the next episode and find out.
Total Drama Island.
Episode 14 has no eliminations, but we did learn a good bit of information. We have 10 players left. And everyone from this point on will be on the jury, which I'm assuming if it's like Survivor, then that is the jury of people that will vote for the winner. Sometimes Survivor does a final 2. Sometimes Survivor does a final 3. And then the jury votes for who they want to win. So I don't know if they're going to do a final 2 in Total Drama Island or a final 3. But he did mention a jury, so I'm assuming that that's going to be how it works. We also find out that the merge is next episode, so there'll no longer be the Killer Bass and the Screaming Gophers. Everyone will be for themselves. 10 people left, dude. I mean, honestly, I feel like that means we have a really solid chance of predicting who the winner is. I mean, we've got a 1 in 10 chance of getting it right at this point, and it's only going to keep getting lower and lower. And we've been locking in Heather for quite a while at this point. And I I don't think I'm changing it anytime soon. I mean, the only debate really, because I mean, she's got a 1 in 10 chance of winning, and I don't think that she is going to be eliminated anytime soon. I really feel like she's going to make it all the way to the finals, right? Because she's the big villain of the season. The question is, will they have the villain of the season win the game? That's the only part where I'm like, I don't know if they'll do that. Because if I was writing the show, then I would be inclined to make a fan favorite character, like a not a villain character, or more of a hero character win the whole season. And that could be anyone, really. I mean, Gwen's kind of the best example because she's like Heather's foil. So it's like if Heather's the big bad guy, she's always feuding with Gwen, so that would make Gwen the good guy. But there's also like Lashana and Owen who are just like really fun characters. Duncan is also really fun. He's a very interesting character. He kind of has this dynamic of like he's the bad boy, but also, he had that showmance with Courtney and he's a very dynamic character. And then you have like Jeff and Bridget and DJ. All of those characters are fun characters. DJ's a very sweet character. So if you want a good person to win the game, DJ is a great choice. But I mean, I know like Heather is such an important part of the show. I know that she's going to make it far. I just feel it. And so I want to keep her as my winner pick for now because I guess she's the only person I'm really certain about at this point. As for who I'm going to lock in for who I think goes home next, everything's going to be different because next episode, there's no more teams, right? So it's not a team voting out one of their own. It's everyone for themselves. Anyone is up to bat, which makes me a little nervous because what if they send Heather home and then my winner pick gets eliminated? That would be extremely embarrassing. I mean, honestly, last time I locked in Trent, we just have not been seeing a lot from him. We've been seeing less and less of the guys in general. So like Trent and DJ would be solid choices. But I think I'm just going to stick with Trent. All right, let's go watch and find out.
Total Drama Island.
Another big twist, baby. Episode 15. We see 2 players that were already eliminated return to the game. Izzy and Eva. So we went from 10 players left. So now we're back up to 12 players in the game, but it is the merge now. So it's every person for themselves. The individual immunity challenge for this episode is all about withstanding torture for like 10 seconds. So you got like a poison ivy spa treatment or being locked in a barrel with a bunch of leeches. The usual. Slowly but surely, people are dropping out of this competition until finally, Lashana is crowned the winner. She is the only person who is immune at the bonfire ceremony where someone is being sent home. And everyone votes out Eva. So, welcome back. Adios. So I didn't, Eva was not the person that I locked in last time to be going home, but that's because I didn't know Eva was going to be back in the game. But that's just how the cookie crumbles. Anything can happen on Total Drama Island. Now I need to lock in who I think is going to go home next episode. And I've been locking in Trent, except in this episode, we see a lot more of Trent. Like we see him rekindle his relationship with Gwen. So I'm thinking that there's some unfinished business there. I don't think they're going to send him home packing. And then there's Izzy. It would be pretty wild for them to bring back 2 characters just to immediately send them back home back-to-back episodes. So I think that's a little far-fetched, but it would be the kind of thing this show does. It's very funny. And we do get a weird moment at the end of this episode as Eva's leaving, and she's like, Izzy lied. She wasn't in the jungle, because Izzy's whole thing, if you remember, the military police was after her when she got eliminated, and so she ran off into the jungle, and apparently she's just been living in the jungle the whole time. But Eva says that she lied about that. So I'm guessing that there's some sort of resolution to that storyline. So I think Izzy's safe for now. We haven't seen a lot from Duncan ever since Courtney left the game. So, I mean, maybe Duncan goes home next. I think I'm going to lock in Duncan. As for my winner pick, who I think is going to win the whole game, I've been locking in Heather. I don't think I'm going to change it. If she ends up going home soon, I'll look like an idiot, but I just really feel like she's in it for the long run. We still have 11 other players to go, and I just don't see Heather being the next one to go. I think that she could win the whole season. I'm keeping Heather. So let's go watch the next episode and see what happens.
Total Drama Island.
I should have stuck to my guns and kept locking in Trent for who I thought was going home next. The one time I move it off of him and he's out of here. It's episode 16 and we get this really big moment. The episode is very Gwen and Trent heavy. Their showmance relationship. Things start working out. They're in love. But Heather is the best at this game. She is such a strategy beast. She uses her manipulation and manages to break them up. And she convinces everyone left on the show that Trent cheated on Gwen with Heather because she manipulated him and they kissed. So Lashana, who is besties with Gwen, was like, oh, okay, you gonna cheat on my girl Gwen. So Lashana goes to everyone and she's like, we're either getting out Heather or we're getting out Trent for what they've done to Gwen. And everybody's like, bet, we'll do that. But then Heather gets immunity because she wins the challenge. So then it's just kind of like, it's got to be Trent because it can't be Heather. So Trent goes home. So what this tells me is two things. The first one being, if I have a major feeling that someone is going to be going home soon, like Trent, who I've locked in for several times, I need to stick with my guns because even if I'm off by a few episodes, they probably are going home soon. The second thing that this episode taught me was that Heather is so good at playing the game. She's great at the strategy part of the game. She's great at the manipulation part of the game. She's not here to make friends. She's here to win the $100,000. But, and I've voiced this concern a few times now, I'm not sure if the writers want the villain of the season to be the winner. It's probably going to be one of the good guys, right? And Gwen has very much become the main character of the show. And in this episode, after, the whole Trent ordeal, at the end of the episode, they realized that it was all Heather's fault and he wasn't cheating on her. It was a misunderstanding because Heather manipulated them. And they have this really wholesome moment. And Trent says, you can do this. You can go on and win the game. And it just kind of really felt like it submitted Gwen as the fan favorite hero of the season. I have not switched my winner pick in a long time, but I am actually going to switch from Heather to Gwen. Now, who do I think is going to go home in the next episode? I have to lock in my prediction for that. Last time I locked in Duncan, and I still think that's a good idea. However, there is a major plot point that has just not been showing up at all lately, and that is the Jeff and Bridget showmance. We've been barely seeing anything from these guys, and all of the showmances have been getting wrapped up kind of in rapid succession. Gwen lost Trent, Duncan lost Courtney, and now I think it's probably time for either Jeff or Bridget to be sent home. And so it's kind of a toss-up between either of them. But a guy went home this episode, so I'm going to guess that a girl goes home next episode. So I'm going to lock in Bridget. So let's go watch the next episode, and we'll see what happens.
Total Drama Island.
Dubs in the chat. Dubs in the chat. Guys, I got another one right. Bridget goes home in this episode, which means that out of the 17 episodes that we have watched so far, I have correctly predicted 3 of the eliminations. That's really not too bad. You know what I mean? It's not great, but I expected to get 0. Hopefully we can get a few more, which it should get easier in theory as less and less people are in the game. This episode's challenge was a giant game of hide and seek. Now, what's interesting is that Heather and Lashana both get immunity in this episode, which this is not the first time that Lashana has won a challenge. This is not the first time that Heather has won a challenge. So I think that means that the two of them are kind of in it for the long haul. And honestly, I might have made a big mistake when I locked in Gwen as my winner pick. Maybe it's going to be Lashana. Because, our big argument is that even though I think Heather is going to go to the finale because she's the big villain of the season, I think that they're going to have a fan favorite good guy win the season. And that's why I locked in Gwen, but I'm wondering if maybe Lashana fits that even better. But I'm not just going to, change my picks out all the time. I'm going to stay with Gwen for a little bit. And then if I feel strongly about Lashana in the next couple of episodes, I will probably flip my pick. But for right now, I want to stay true to my gut because there's only so many people left. And if I just spend the next 9 episodes voting for each one to be the winner, it feels like cheating. Now, who do I think is going to go home in the next episode? It looks like the tides might actually be turning against Heather a little bit. She is the smartest player, but her alliance mate, Lindsay, is getting sick of her. And Heather would have actually been going home the last few episodes if it wasn't for the fact that she had won immunity. Now, personally, I think that Heather's just going to keep doing this. Everyone hates her. They want to vote her out, but she either wins immunity or she manages to trick someone else into going home. And I think she's going to do that all the way to the finale. So I'm not locking in Heather. We have Jeff, who just lost his showmance in Bridget, and a bunch of the guys. Well, I say a bunch of the guys. There's only 3 guys left other than Jeff. They're upset with him because he did not vote Bridget out. In fact, they tie him up and make him sleep outside. And I would, just lock him in because it's like, okay, he lost his showmance. The guys are mad at him. Maybe he's up next. But here's the thing. In this episode, the guys make a guys alliance to go up against the girls because the girls are going to outnumber them. So I don't think that the guys can afford voting out someone in their all guys alliance because then they'll have even less numbers against the girls. So with that in mind, since a girl went home this time, it's now 5-4 guys versus girls. If the guys manage to stick together and not send Jeff home, then it's probably going to be a girl who goes home. My best guess is that maybe there's some sort of storyline that happens between Lindsay and Heather. Maybe Lindsay tries to betray Heather and get Heather out. Heather finds out about it, flips it onto Lindsay. Lindsay goes home. That feels very true to their dynamic and to Heather's character. I also had the thought process of I try to remember classic Survivor storylines that happen in pretty much every season just because they're human nature. And Lashana is kind of something of a challenge beast. She just won the challenge. She kind of dominated. Are the rest of the players going to see her as a threat and try to eliminate her because she's so good at winning challenges? But I don't know that for sure. So I'm going to be locking in Lindsay. All right, let's go watch the next episode.
Total Drama Island.
Guys, Lindsay goes home, which means that we just got back-to-back predictions correct on who goes home. Honestly, it feels incredible. I will say, though, that the way that Lindsay goes home is not the way that I thought it would go. In the last section, I talked about how she would try to betray Heather. Heather would send her home. That's not what happens. But the challenge for this episode is that they have to build bikes and then race them. And then in the final race, the last person to cross the finish line goes home. They don't get voted out. They just get sent home. Lindsay was actually very good at the challenge. She built both her bike and Heather's bike. But due to a technicality in the fact that Chris McLean is an asshole, Lindsay gets eliminated. After this happens, Heather is absolutely horrendous to Lindsay because Heather could actually save Lindsay if she wanted to, but she chooses not to. And then just starts going in about how they're not actually friends. She was just using her. She's only here to be famous. She isn't here to make friends. So Lindsay actually loses it. She's like cussing out Heather, and everybody's gathered around cheering on Lindsay as she's like just reading Heather for filth. But Heather has immunity. So yeah, but Lindsay goes home. Pretty rough. What I will say is that I do think that Heather's reign of terror is going to be coming to an end soon. It really feels like in this episode, the story line that she is on peaked. Everyone hates her. She just lost her only remaining ally. I feel really good that I switched my winner pick off of her a few episodes ago to Gwen. So I do think maybe Heather's time is coming. In this episode, they mentioned something about a final 3. Now, I don't know if that means that it's going to be like Survivor and there will be 3 finalists and then the jury votes for who wins out of those 3. But if that's the case, I have some ideas for who I think the final 3 might be. I think it could potentially be a Heather, Gwen, Lashana final 3. Or maybe they would like one of the guys in there. Like maybe Gwen, Duncan, Heather. Or if Heather ends up going home because it seems like her time's, coming to an end, maybe it's Gwen, Duncan, Lashana. I'm not quite sure, but I am going to lock in either Izzy or Jeff for who I think is going to be getting eliminated next episode. Probably Izzy. She's just not a major part of the episodes. And it's like every time she's in an episode, she's like off doing her own side quest. Like in this episode, for the entire runtime, Izzy and Lashana are just falling down a cliff. Like they don't even participate in the challenge. So I'm going to lock in Izzy. I think she's going to go home next episode. I'm going to keep my winner pick, Gwen, even though I will say we barely saw her in this episode, but we'll see. Let's go watch the next episode and see what happens.
Total Drama Island.
Guys, we're on episode 19, and this was by far my favorite episode yet. It's a Friday the 13th, slasher movie parody episode. The campers watch a scary movie, and then mysteriously, there's a chainsaw killer with a hook on the loose, and Chris and Chef take off and abandon the campers at the camp. And so basically the campers then get picked off one by one by the killer, who's actually just Chef with a hockey mask and a chainsaw and a hook. And he picks them off one by one until there's only one person left. Unfortunately, there turns out to be an actual chainsaw killer with a hook, and Gwen beats him up. So they give Gwen the challenge win since she beat up an actual, murderer with a chainsaw and a hook. And since DJ ran off screaming and crying, even though he never interacted with the real or fake killer, they decided that it was time for him to go home because he was only afraid of Heather because she was wearing a face mask, not like a hockey mask, like skincare. So yeah, DJ goes home. I did not see that coming. I had locked in Izzy, and I thought it was going to be either Izzy or maybe Jeff. So for DJ to go home is pretty shocking. And actually, I was way off because in this episode, Izzy gets into a bit of a showmance with Owen. Now, Owen does ruin it because he offers Izzy up as bait to the killer in order to save himself. But it did kind of make it seem like maybe Izzy has some more runway in this game. Some more miles in this crazy car we call life. Some more travel miles on this crazy plane that we call life. Some extra subway tickets on this crazy train that we call life. A few more marshmallows in this crazy game we call Total Drama Island. Yeah. So that's how I end that bit. Yeah. So I think I'm going to say it's time for Jeff to go home. Without Bridget there, he really doesn't have any sort of story arc going for him. I would say it would be Izzy, but I feel like Izzy has some more runway on this crazy game we call life because of her relationship with Owen now coming into play. And I'm going to keep my winner pick as Gwen. She won the challenge this episode. She faced off against a real killer and beat him up. I really think that the show is pushing her to be the fan favorite, the hero of the season. She's going to go up in an epic battle against Heather. And then if it's a final 3, maybe she's also going up against Lashana or Duncan. But yeah, I really like this episode. Let's go watch the next one and find out who goes home.
Total Drama Island.
Well, guys, I have good news and I have bad news. In episode 20, Izzy goes home. Now, this is bad news because I should have stuck to my guns and just, locked her in for who I thought was going home next week, but I actually switched it to Jeff. So, sucks for me. The good news, however, is that Gwen won the challenge again this episode. It was a hunting challenge. You have 8 hours to trap the animal that is assigned to you, and she did it first. And that's making me feel really good about having her locked in as my winner pick. Because now that Izzy is gone, we are down to the final 6. I have a 1 in 6 chance of predicting the winner of the entire season. So I'm definitely keeping Gwen locked in as my winner pick. But as for who I think is going to go home next episode, it really could be anyone at this point. I mean, we're really down to the bottom. I still feel like Jeff has nothing left to do in this show. And Duncan actually sets up an alliance with Heather in this episode. So that makes me think that they're going to be around for a little bit longer. And I think actually that might be a great final 3 for this show. Duncan, Gwen, and Heather. So if that's the final 3, which I feel like actually really good about, that would mean that the next person that goes home is either Jeff, Lashana, or Owen. And I'm going to just stick to my guns. I've locked in Jeff for the past few episodes. And when this has happened earlier in the season, when I have a feeling that someone's about to go home, and then I don't lock them in because I lock them in 2 or 3 times in a row, they don't go home, so I switch it, and then they go home. I'm just going to stick to my guns. I think Jeff's up next. Let's go watch the next episode and find out.
Total Drama Island.
Guys, Jeff went home. I got another one right. To be fair, it's a lot easier to predict who's going home next when there's only 6 people left. I don't know the math on that. What's the percentage on 1 in 6? Like if it was 1 in 3, then that's a 33% chance. I don't know math. I'm a YouTuber. You guys do the math. Let me know down in the comments what that percent is. But yeah, like especially because in the last episode, we talked about how I feel really confident that the final 3 is going to be Heather, Gwen, and Duncan. And so I really had a 1 in 3 chance of figuring out who was going home next. And I'm feeling really good that it's going to be one of them next time. Anyway, this episode's challenge was a triathlon where 2 of the players are handcuffed to each other and they have to complete different tasks. Like they have to row a boat to Boney Island, or they have to eat gross food, or they have to make a giant totem pole out of the faces of all of the eliminated players in the order that they were eliminated in. It's a pretty fun episode. We see Gwen as kind of the main character of this episode once again. The whole episode shows her kind of working through her own personal issues through her relationship with Jeff, who she's handcuffed to. And by the end of the episode, they end up becoming really good friends. They even like give each other a hug and have this good moment where they take a picture together. This makes me feel like I am dead on correct that Gwen is going to be the winner, because we've seen this several times now. When Trent went home, they had this moment where Trent goes, "You go on and you win this whole thing." When Jeff went home, Jeff took a picture with her. They became friends, and he's like, "I'm rooting for you." So I'm keeping Gwen locked in as my winner pick. Now for who I think is going to be eliminated next episode. I think it's down to these 2. And I think it's going to be maybe someone a little shocking, like when DJ went home kind of out of nowhere. I think it's going to be kind of shocking. And so I'm going to say Owen goes home next. So can you imagine if I got 3 in a row? Because this was 2 in a row, right? If I got 3 in a row, come on, dude. Let's go watch the next episode and find out.
Total Drama Island.
Episode 22 was very different. This episode, we got to see what all of the eliminated players have been doing on the resort that they've been staying in since they were eliminated. Now, this is very similar to Survivor. This is a parody of what Survivor does, which Survivor has Ponderosa, which is the kind of resort where the eliminated players hang out until the season is over. And that's because they can't just like send them home, because then they would spoil what happened. You know what I mean? So they have to keep everybody for the entire time that the show is filming, and then they all get to go home at the same time, with some hefty NDAs signed, I imagine. But honestly, the biggest part of this episode is at the end when Chris makes the eliminated players vote for who gets eliminated next out of our remaining contestants. And due to these characters being dumb and they just keep accidentally saying Lashana's name, like they would even be like, oh, I don't want Lashana to go home. And then because they said the name Lashana, it counts as a vote. Then there was a parrot, and the parrot kept repeating her name, and that counted for like 2 votes against her. So Lashana is who went home next. There have been maybe 3 eliminations so far that I feel were just unjust. I mean, this is a scripted show. It's a comedy show. But it's like, you know, she got cheated. She could have won the whole game. Courtney got cheated by Harold. She could have won the whole game. And even Bridget. No, not Bridget. Lindsay. Lindsay got cheated. Because the whole thing with that elimination was that the last person across the finish line gets sent home. Well, the only 2 people that managed to even cross the finish line was Heather and then her. The other racers crashed and didn't make it to the finish line. And so on a technicality, she was the last one to cross the finish line. And so, you know, it's just, it keeps happening. Hold on, guys. I dropped a thumbtack. It's dangerous work. But anyway, we're down to our final 4. And I locked in Owen because I thought he was going home next. Didn't seem to be the case. It was Lashana. But I still feel really good about everything else I've been saying, which I think the final 3 is Duncan, Gwen, and Heather. So that means that I'm locking in Owen for who I think is going home next. And I'm going to be keeping Gwen as my winner pick. Let's go watch the next episode and find out what happens.
Total Drama Island.
All right, guys, I'm jumping in real quick. There's not much to say about episode 23. I'll explain. So in this episode, the campers wake up. A storm had washed all of the camp away. And so they wake up on like a deserted island. And so they're just trying to like survive. And so there's not really a challenge for this week. And then at the bonfire ceremony, everyone votes off Owen's pet coconut, Mr. Coconut. So everything is pretty much the same. I do think that Owen is the one going home next. So I'm going to keep that locked in. And I'm going to keep Gwen locked in as my winner.
Total Drama Island.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Allow me to collect my thoughts. We get a big twist in this episode I did not see coming. So it's episode 24. The challenge is guys versus girls because there's 2 guys left. There's 2 girls left. Basically, they're all stranded in the woods. The first team to manage to find their way back wins. The girls win, which means that the only people up for elimination are the 2 guys. And I was walking on sunshine, brother, because I totally predicted the final 3 episodes ago. And I locked in Owen as the next person to be eliminated. I was like, this has been my most successful video I've ever done. For all of the people that think that I'm the world's worst detective, I'm looking at you, Mom. I was finally going to show the world how good of a detective I am, how good I am at figuring out and predicting things that are happening in TV shows. I was going to use my knowledge of Survivor, my love for the show that this show parodies, and I was going to show the world. And then Duncan went home. I did not see that coming. I thought Duncan was going to be in the finals. Owen, who was someone I did not think was going to make it to the final 3, is in the final 3. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think that the big battle at the end of the season is Gwen versus Heather, the evil villain versus the hero. And then also we have Owen there to be the comedy relief. And honestly, it does make a lot of sense to do it this way. You know, Owen's been the comic relief kind of the whole season. It'll help break up the animosity between these 2 rivals in the finale. But I will say I am a bit confused on how this is going to work. So in Survivor, for the finale, the final 3 sit down, they make their case to the jury, and then the jury votes for which of those 3 wins the game. Now, Survivor has done final 2s before in the past, and that probably was the case when the show was coming out, I think. So maybe it's a final 2, but they had mentioned a final 3 a few episodes ago. But where I'm confused is there's still a couple episodes left in the season. Like the next episode isn't the season finale. So I'm almost curious if there is another challenge, but I don't know. So just to be safe, I'm going to lock in Owen as the next elimination in case there is another challenge. And if there's not, no harm, no foul. I'm keeping Gwen locked in as my winner pick. I think that we nailed this one, dude. I'm really excited. Let's go watch the next episode and find out what happens.
Total Drama Island.
This is back-to-back episodes with very shocking eliminations. So there was another elimination. It was not a final 3. It's going to be a final 2. And in this episode, the challenge was this spin the bottle, truth or dare style game. Basically, the eliminated contestants all picked a dare, and then one at a time, the 3 remaining spin the big bottle. Whoever it lands on, they have to do that eliminated player's dare. And if you don't do the dare, you get sent home. No votes, nothing. If you don't do the dare, you're out. Owen and Gwen team up, and they manage to get Heather eliminated. I really, really, really thought that it was going to be a Heather and Gwen final 2, but it's not. It's a Gwen and Owen final 2. So let's really get into the weeds of this. I've been locking in Gwen as who I think is going to win for the last 8 episodes. Before that, I had locked in Lashana and Harold and Heather for who I thought was going to win. I have a decision to make here, kind of. It is a 50-50 chance of predicting the winner of the season at this point. Now, I can stick with my pick of Gwen, right? And then that looks really good if she wins, because it's like I've had her locked in for 9 episodes in a row. Or I could switch my pick to Owen. There's nothing against the rules that says I cannot switch my pick right before the finale. But that's really dangerous, because if I lock in Owen and Gwen wins, I look like a complete idiot. I had the correct person locked in for episodes and episodes and episodes, and then in the last moment, I panicked, picked the other player, and lost. And if I do switch to Owen and say Owen wins, does that even count as a win? You know what I mean? If I didn't lock him in once the entire season, and then at the last second I switch to him and he does win, does that say anything about me, or do I just get lucky? You know what I mean? So I honestly feel like the best bet is to stick with Gwen. I've been saying that she feels like the main character of this show since about halfway through the season. I've stuck to my guns for the last 8 episodes. I'm going to do it one more time. Stick with Gwen. Did I actually call her Heather? I think I've actually called her Heather a couple times. I think I just have Heather on the mind because I am extremely shocked that she's gone. I thought it was going to be a Heather Gwen final 2, dude. But I will say, looking at it now, it does make sense. Like from a writing standpoint. Because everybody hates Heather, right? So if the jury of eliminated players is voting for who wins the season between Gwen and Heather, everyone's going to vote for Gwen. There's no suspense. It's like, we know who's going to win the season. It's Gwen. But now that it's Gwen and Owen, 2 very liked fan favorites, fun characters, it's kind of a toss-up, you know? Like, maybe the guys will vote for Owen and the girls vote for Gwen, other than Heather. Heather will probably not vote for Gwen. But Owen had a little bit of a relationship with Izzy at one point, you know? So I do think that this makes sense from a writing standpoint versus the Gwen versus Heather. But I'm rambling enough. I'm very excited to see who wins. 26 episodes. Oh my God. Hey, let's go watch the next episode and see who wins.
Total Drama Island.
Well, let me just say real quick. Total Drama Island rules. Throughout these 26 episodes, I've really fallen in love with the show and all of these characters. This is so much fun. And I know that there's like a bunch of seasons to this show, so I'm very excited to watch more. And, you know, if this video does well, I'll probably make videos for those seasons as well, trying to predict the winners of those seasons. But for the winner of Total Drama Island, I was wrong about how the finale was going to work. Just I'm trying to drag, I mean, you guys probably know who wins, but I'm trying to drag it out. I wasn't right about how the finale works. No one voted. It wasn't like a jury voted for them like an actual Survivor. There was a challenge, one last competition between Owen and Gwen, the hardest one yet. It was a giant obstacle course. They had to do stuff like cross this giant like gorge and it's on a tiny plank of wood, and they have to hold an eagle egg while the eagle parents are swarming them, and they have to make their way across and not fall into the shark-infested waters down below. And even though it was close, it was a very close competition. Owen wins the season 1 of Total Drama Island. I did not see that coming, dude. I was so certain that Gwen was the winner. I think even in the last episode, I was trying to hype Owen up a little bit just to be like, oh, it could be either of them. But in my head, I was like, this is such an obvious ending. Gwen is the obvious winner. I never locked Owen in once. Not one time. The only time that I locked Owen in is because I thought he was the next elimination. Oh man, I very clearly lost this challenge. Dang, dude, if you enjoyed this video and you think it would be fun to see if I can draft the winning player of an actual Survivor season, then you can check out my Survivor show, Making the Merge, link down below. Me and my 3 buddies, we draft Survivor players, and whoever has the winner on their drafted team, you know, they win the big prize, they win the big cup. It's awesome. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I love Total Drama Island. All right, dope.